Well, good day, everyone. I say good day because Lynn has a lot of fans in Australia as well. It's probably, I don't know, the middle of the night there right now. I've known Lynn for many years. She's a highly respected leader, researcher. She's a best-selling author and a presenter. One of the things she's really known for is her ability to translate cutting-edge research into practical and actionable strategies for system and school leaders. She's developed a really clear roadmap for using ongoing assessment to inform instruction and advance equity and excellence across entire educational systems. We've always shared that passion for equity and excellence together. Her work has transformed classrooms, schools, districts, and schooling systems internationally. In 2025, she received the ACEL Presidential Citation Award in recognition of her exceptional impact on educational leadership in Australia and beyond. I think she's best known for her Clarity Learning Suite. I've got the book sitting over here beside my desk for her Clarity Learning Suite and the Clarity Essential Suite, which provide practical, what do you do and how do you do it, guidance to improve teaching and ensure growth and achievement for all students. She's also the author of 7 influential books with Corwin Press, collaborating with leading thinkers such as Michael Fullan and John Hattie. And her newest book, Precision in Practice, The Voices of Evidence-Proven System and School Improvement, will be published in August 2026. Thank you so much, Lynn, for joining us on this webinar.
Thanks, Doug, so much. I'm really pleased to be here and to welcome everyone from the Learning Bar, from across Canada, and of course across the globe. It's my pleasure to be here and share our thinking together. I'm looking forward to you putting things in the chat bar. I always collect the chat bar afterwards because that becomes data. And today we're talking about data, all forms of data. I want to ensure that all of you are comfortable in this space and that you can become authentically you. So while we're all together, I want you also to feel whichever way you learn best is the way you learn through this webinar. I'd also like to pay my respects to our elders, past, present, and emerging, on the lands where I live in beautiful Ontario, Canada, specifically on Lake Huron. Very frozen and chilly at the moment, but we're looking forward to a beautiful summer ahead. And I'd also like to pay my respects to all of your elders, past, present, and emerging, wherever you're coming from for this webinar. I want to craft for you what a professional learning session looks like and what you need to think about in the planning. I start with a minds on. What's this session going to be about? Well, yes, it's going to be about data, but I think about data in terms of having emotional connections and cognitive insights about each face. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Bottom line, it looks like trust, trusting in each other as colleagues, trusting in our work together. So we need to be in that inclusive space where we're trusting each other. I might not talk about the importance of building relationships and establishing trust throughout the webinar, but just know that it's always underneath everything we do. Not only do I have a minds on, but also operating norms, how we're going to treat each other. Now, I'm not going to read the slides to you, but I know you can skim and scan. I think it's really important that when you're presenting in a professional learning situation, that you talk about how we're going to treat each other in this session, what's important to each other. So today, what's important is taking yes, but out of our conversations and thinking about having an open to learning stance. What's possible in your situation? So we've done minds on, we've done operating norms, and now in every professional learning session, I'd like to see learning intentions. What are we learning together about. And this, of course, mirrors exactly what we want to see in classrooms. In classrooms, we want minds on what's happening in this lesson, what's the focus of the unit. We want to see where in the classroom do we get that support, how we're treating each other, our respectful learning environment. And now, in this particular unit, what are we learning? And this particular lesson, what part of the learning intention for the unit is being developed? So here are all of our learning intentions for this webinar together. And success criteria. I have a love affair with learning intentions and success criteria, especially when learning intentions are deconstructed and we use that opportunity to work on the vocabulary of the unit of the discipline. And then, of course, move to co-constructed success criteria. Do we have to make these up? No, they're in the curriculum expectations. So that word co-construction is really meaningful for me as it is for you, because that is really about relationship building when we work together on the work. So because you weren't in Chile, Canada with me, here are the success criteria for this session. I want you to really think about data in new and different ways. I want you to be able to make connections between my research and your work in schools. And I want you to think about your leadership, because everyone's a leader. So data. I started with Michael Fullan probably around the year 2002 when I invited him to come to work in York Region District School Board alongside me. And we thought about all kinds of data. We thought about the big statistical data. We thought about what did it look like in our networks? What did it look like in our schools? At the time, we didn't really drill down to the classroom until we were stopped up short one day and thought, what's non-negotiable? What's non-negotiable in this work? So how are we going to make data really simple for everyone? So here are our 4 questions. I call it a 4 square. I want you to use it often, because when I talk about data, I often see people in the audience either crossing their shoulders, leaning back, or staring at the ceiling, totally disengaged because of that word data. So let's make it simple. Take one piece of data, take a 4 square, and then think about what's noteworthy, what's a surprise, what's a question, what's a concern, and then maybe add another layer of data until you come up with some really substantial statements about the data for your school, for your network, for your system. I was working in Armidale. So Armidale is in New South Wales. Armidale, yes, is in New South Wales in Australia. And I talked to everyone about the non-negotiables of our work. Parameter 1, we believe all students can learn. Parameter 14, it's all about owning all the faces. And someone said to me, well, what about parameter 6? Isn't it non-negotiable? And I was stopped up short. Oh, of course it is. You have to put faces on your data. You can't go with the statistical data. You're really not delving into that classroom space, which we realized was the unit of change, without knowing the human faces behind the data. So on the right, you'll see a poster that Armidale developed. It's everywhere. It's the 3 non-negotiables and how they're going to unpack them all of the time. So in Armidale, I've worked in person a couple of times a year, but they also purchased the Clarity Learning Suite for every leader and teacher. So it's a blended approach of me in person, but also me on Zoom like this, and they have the opportunity of the resources as well. So that poster is about those non-negotiables. And to me, that's data. The other thing I want us to do in shaping our professional learning session today is develop your own thinking matrix. What's the content around the data that Lyn's sharing. What are the processes she's getting at? How can I use it in my situation? And are there any things I have to remember? So I'll invite you now just to make a 4-column chart wherever you are. And the first thing I want you to say in the content session is craft your professional learning to have some beginning routines. And what's the process? The beginning routines: minds on, operating norms, learning intentions, success criteria, and always beginning with data, as we just did. So throughout our presentation today, I'd like you to make some notes about specifically what's Lyn saying and how does this apply to my situation as a leader. So for me, I want us to begin with the end in mind. That's good assessment literacy. And I want to introduce to you Ethan. Ethan is the CEO at the Learning Bar, and he's going to bring together the focus for our session. So let's listen to Ethan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan Young-Lai, the CEO at the Learning Bar. And Dr. Sharratt's experiences in Australia with OurSCHOOL or Tell Them From Me survey data demonstrate that when system leaders champion data-informed practice and provide coaching, as her team did, schools start to see tangible improvements. And school leaders can seek similar expertise or training to build that capacity through the use of the 14 parameters. Each of the 14 parameters has a clear counterpart in the OurSCHOOL survey measures, which ensures that student voice helps to inform and connect to each of the 14 parameters in a meaningful way. For example, parameter 1, which is about shared beliefs and understanding, that aligns nicely with OurSCHOOL survey student data as we transition from capturing and understanding students' voices to shared responsibility around data-driven decision-making. Parameter 6, which is the case management approach, that can be compared with data from advocacy at school or positive teacher-student relations, also from the OurSCHOOL student survey. And parameter 14, which is about shared responsibility and accountability, that taps into aspects of shared responsibility and accountability found in the OurSCHOOL teacher survey. So using a framework like Clarity's 14 parameters can significantly enhance the use of tools like the OurSCHOOL or Tell Them From Me student survey around school improvement planning processes. In essence, the framework provides the how to the survey's what and ensures that data helps lead to strategic improvement. A key theme in Lyn's work is the use of data to drive equity and systemic improvement, and that aligns very closely with the Learning Bar's focus on using actionable data and achieving educational prosperity for all students. And Lyn's 14 parameter framework is widely respected in education, emphasizing shared responsibility, instructional precision, and a culture of collaborative inquiry. So there's a strong case that her work aligns well with what we do at the Learning Bar, supporting evidence-based decision-making across both Canadian and Australian educational jurisdictions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lyn and the rest of the team to tell you a little bit more.
How good is that? I love the OurSCHOOL data. I love the Tell Them From Me data because what it does is gives me the item by item perception data that I need to customize the what next. Now, what are the Clarity tools that really resonate with the data that's been collected? So it's an opportunity for leaders, teachers, and researchers like Doug and I to work together to really ensure precision in practice, not only in the data we use, but also in the practices around assessment that informs instruction. So thank you, Ethan. And again, starting with the end in mind, what were we thinking about? We were thinking about our data, our big scale EQAO data, we call it in Ontario, and how many of our students were underperforming and what were we going to do about it. So we started with some sense of urgency around the data. And here are just some quotes that I've collected about that sense of urgency. We don't want one student falling between the cracks. So that was our call to action, to urgency. I was walking in Australia, in Sydney actually, and came to a bus stop and just stopped right up short and said to my husband, "Did you see what I just saw?" 1 in 5 remote Indigenous students can read. I thought it meant can't read, and I looked again, took a picture. It's a bit blurry, but that statistic is everywhere. Doesn't matter whether I'm working across Australia, Moree, Tamworth, where I see emus and kangaroos, whether I'm working in Chile with questions students have. Wherever I go, there's students who can't read, students who can't write, students who need our help. And whether I'm in Dumaji, way up near Cape York in Australia, or I'm traveling across the Kimberley, or I'm working with Doug in Canada, or I'm working in Wales, the questions are all the same. How do you know your students are learning, growing, and achieving? That was our question. How do we know? How do we know everyone can read and write? And I add, think critically. So our mantra became literacy is everyone's business. And then we said, okay, so what's literacy? So we defined it. My two favorite words in the definition, begins and becomes. So literacy to me is not just reading and writing. It's all the acquisition of skills, including mathematics. But importantly, it must become that bottom line, that final paragraph, the ability to think, understand, think critically, apply, communicate. And that's what our work really is about, moving from beginning skills to actually graduating our students who can think critically. And so we used that four square and we started to really look into classrooms now. System level, yes, network level, yes, school level, and we added classroom level. Before we began, though, we decided, well, what did we want our literate graduates to look like? And if you have your Clarity text, I've put some page numbers there so that you can tab that text. Here's a puzzle with the literate graduate. This came from right across the system, 9,000 teachers, couple of hundred schools. What does the literate graduate look like? And here's what we came up with. So it's beyond reading and writing and doing mathematics to actually being able to think critically as a graduate of one of our secondary schools. I think it's really important that we know the end in mind. And when we are asked, why are we doing this work? We can always say, because the data we collect informs our practice to ensure all our students can think critically as they graduate from one of our secondary schools. We also did a one-pager. What's your one-pager look like? Michael Fullan asked me about our system plan for school improvement, and I kind of mumbled and said, it's about 78 pages. He said, really? Do you read it? I said, no, not really, unless I have to send it to the Ministry of Education for more money. He said, can you put it on one page? I went, oh my gosh. It took us forever, but we got it down to this one page and 8 pages behind it only. Far cry from 78. So I challenge you, can you put your implementation plan, whether you're at a school, a network, a system, a classroom teacher, can you put that on one page? And you see that there are two things that are important. Literacy was our watermark. Everything we did was about literacy in that broadest sense around the definition. And the other important part is that solid black line. Above the line is the system, below the line are the schools. And there needs to be a strong, heavy alignment between what the system's doing and what the schools are doing and the teachers in the classroom are doing. And when people asked to go to professional learning around basket weaving, I said, how does that fit into our priority of literacy? And the answer was, not really. So no, we're going to align everything that we do, even our professional learning, around that broadest definition of literacy. Well, Michael said, something seems to be working. What's working? And so, of course, we asked some schools, we did some research. Michael said, you do the research, you go out and ask the schools. So I did. I asked the 17 schools in most challenging circumstances, how are you jumping the curve? What are you doing? You need to tell us. They were able to tell us. And they're the 14 parameters. And we haven't changed our mind about any of those parameters. We might have tweaked a few words, but they remain the same. One thing Michael said to me was never put it in a list. So on page 11 of Clarity, they're in a list. But they're not a checklist. They all weave together. And so wonderfully, in Clarity, Corwin put them in these beautiful circles. So they show the interconnectedness of each. And they are all about equity and excellence. Well, excellence is easy to say. It's about students growing and achieving and knowing that they are and knowing how to teach each phase. Equity, not so easy. So we've defined equity as no subgroup should be doing better than another. I want you to think about that. You've got lots of subgroups in your data. Who are the faces behind the data, those subgroups? Who are they? Can you put them in a private place on a wall so you can see their faces and then have a discussion? How do we teach each one? That's equity. That's knowing your subgroup data and making that subgroup data come to life. So we found the 14 parameters and we have looked at them and we've pulled them apart, we've put them back together, and we've tried to align them with every single document in every jurisdiction where I work. And it always shows that the 14 parameters are robust. They match every what we should be doing in every context right across the globe. The 14 parameters become the how. So this is New South Wales. We did a Gantt chart. We measured it in Victoria against FISO 2.0. They worked, they matched there. We did it in Wales. We matched their work, their documents around schools as learning organizations with the 14. Always the alignment was apparent. It wasn't a surprise. Everything aligns, and that's what you want to be able to do. Take the documents you work with and do that gap analysis with the 14. And then you've got the tools you need. And of course, with some help, we found the non-negotiables. And I always have used that word advisedly, but I'm becoming braver and braver that saying, these are the non-negotiables you really need to attend to, no matter what jurisdiction you work in. And I work across sectors, so public schools, Catholic schools, independent schools. It's all about these three, and then how the other parameters support them and work together with them. The only one that's really hierarchical is number 1. And you'll find that all about number 1 in chapter 2. It's really about equity and excellence. So you take a look at the beginning words. Michael and I tried them all. Every student, each student, and we always came back to all. It's about all students, and we really do mean all, not these students over here, and oh, by the way, those others will go down the hall. No, we mean all students. We mean all teachers. We know that we also mean all teachers, leaders, and students can articulate why they do what they do every day. And of course, high expectations is a must. And I often ask, are your expectations high enough? How do you know? And do you have early and ongoing intervention? Now, this is the work, this one particularly, from Hill and Crovola, who I love, educators who came to our Quest conference. I've worked with them right across Australia. And they were doing the Bell project, which was about early learning. So when my secondary teachers saw that number 3, and it said high expectations and early intervention are essential, they said, we don't see ourselves in that. So I added the word ongoing, because the intervention isn't just early. Very important to be early, but our interventions need to be across the K to 12 spectrum. So that was parameter number 1, center. And then let's look at parameter 7. And I want you to have an open to inquiry mindset here and know that data walls, which we really toyed with calling questioning walls or wondering walls, but we stayed with data walls because we've been writing about it for so long. So when we did our 2022 version of putting faces on the data, we kept with data walls. That's what people are familiar with. But the one on the right is about writing. It's a very large college, secondary school, and they did lots of rapid writes and they did lots of assessment of writing before they came up with this data wall, which were only the students of concern in a very private place. And they celebrated every time one of those students came off the wall. The one on the right I show you because it's a wall in a private place again about attendance. Sometimes it's easy to develop a data wall with cut and dried data, not something that you could say, well, maybe or maybe not. Well, attendance is they either are there or they're not there. It's a way to start the data wall. And you'll see the categories: critical risk, high risk, at risk, and then possible risk and no risk. So a way to unpack your student population, and then you can add to it as you add other data. But sometimes it's easy to start with something that is black and white. Now I want you to look at this one. This is also Armidale. And they're the ones who had the poster. And here are the leaders at Armidale triangulating their data on a very private data wall. And what they've noticed is the EQAO data, which they call NAPLAN data in Australia, says one thing, and their teacher judgment data about a couple of students in particular says something very different. So there was a huge conversation. Well, is our teacher judgment data wrong because NAPLAN is saying they're excelling, they're exceeding, and our teacher judgment data doesn't say that? So the conversation was so powerful. What do we need to do differently? When we see a discrepancy in the data, they would never know on the discrepancy unless they put the faces on that data wall. Here's another one that I love. I work in and across Victoria, and these are rural and remote schools, many of them, but there are 6 who've come together, and they've decided writing is their focus because that's what their data indicate. And individually on the left, there are 101 students in these 6 schools, but on the right, they've collectively put all their students in one data wall, and they own all of them now. And now they're talking about which ones of these students, not according to, well, first it's your school and second it's my school. No, which is most important and urgent that we need to bring to a case management meeting. Some pictures of the data wall cards, very important, again, in a private place, but important to keep because you can see the progression. I want us to be reminded that when the data wall, it goes curly, you know, and yellow and unused, it's time to pull it down because we must move from display, because that's what they told us to do, to documentation, seeing data walls as a place in a private space to talk about instruction, not about the student's parents, not about anything else, but where the student is and how do I get that student to the next step? Who around me, looking at that data wall as well, has taught this student that could help me? So of course, those data conversations are the result of a living, growing data wall. In the SENT case study that you'll be reading as a follow-up to this webinar, Here's a little guy who, through the case management meeting, became a writer on the right, but started as a writer on the left. Huge difference. What happened? How did this occur? And the teacher said to me, well, it's all a result of the case management meetings. He's gone from red and orange or yellow to this remarkable and astounding improvement. And we love blue and green. So it was really important for me to ask the teacher, what did you do? Because that is the nub of it. And how have you shared that with the whole staff, which she had, through a piece of student work? And of course, it was important for me to find that little one and ask the student the 5 questions. And he could answer them very specifically and articulately. He could tell me how he improved from the writing on the left to the writing on the right. And was he proud? Amazing. So when we look at parameter 6, we think about 2 parts of the parameter. And that is, you can't put faces on your data until you have the data wall with the data that leads to a 15-minute case management meeting. Both are very critical to the improvement. And what's important after that case management meeting is there's some kind of Google Doc or sharing form where all of the teachers know what are the successful strategies. And we have opportunities to bring teachers to staff meetings, for example, to share their instruction, their instructional intelligence, what's worked through those pieces of student work. When I think about putting faces on the data, I think about all students. This is a special school, and the teachers here are having a case management meeting, but take a look at their wall behind. I love the words. Stationary, no students. Students who are moving in the middle, there they are. And the case management meeting is, how do we get them to jump? Who's jumping? So it's all about instruction, knowing every face, and how to teach each one. Here's a typical case management meeting where we have the leader, the principal, we have a knowledgeable other, not a knockout, KO, knowledgeable other. The teacher and the student is there, not in person, but through the piece of student work. And the conversation becomes, how do we move students to show their improvement? This is a little guy on Thursday Island, very far away. I think you take an airplane and a boat and a ferry and a bus to get to the school. And the entire school was working on the clarity work. And you can see his work on the left and how it became the work on the right. And he could answer those 5 questions. So I really want us to write down, if we don't write anything else down, student work is data. There are all kinds of data, and every piece of data is important. It's how you interpret the data and take action. Also, I want you to know that student work is data, and do you allow teachers time to share their craft knowledge in staff meetings and PLC sessions, showing a piece of work from 6 weeks ago and a piece of work now, and having the teacher talk to other teachers and colleagues and leaders about what were the instructional strategies that worked. So this really leads me to think that all of us are leaders. This is my thesis work with Dr. Ken Leithwood. I don't want to get ever into the conversation about, well, it's either transformational leadership or instructional leadership. To me, these 8 dimensions that we worked on are all about transformational leadership and instructional leadership. Look at number 5. Transformational leaders, who are high performance leaders, understand high impact classroom practice focused on quality assessment that informs instruction. So to me, it's never a struggle either or. It's always about and we're transformational and we transform our cultures um, when we attend to what's happening in classrooms and we work to strengthen that culture of learning that surrounds our 14 parameters. There have been some tools that I've shared, and certainly that's the data wall and the case management meeting. I want to share a leadership strategy that I started with saying, well, this is only for leaders. And I've totally changed my mind. It's not just for leaders. It might start with leaders, but it certainly needs to be about teachers and leaders walking together with purpose and focus in classrooms. So take a look at the question we ask before we start our learning walks and talks. How do we know all students are learning? Well, you can't sit behind your desk and answer that question. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. You have to get out there. And it's not about showing the flag. You know, I go out to the gate and wave to the students coming in and greet the parents. That's not a learning walk and talk. This is purposeful time in the school day. And then people say to me, well, I don't have 5 minutes. Sorry, don't have 5 minutes to do this. Well, let me see. Do you have 5 minutes to find the lost lunch bag or the owner of the hat and mitts? So on your way to find the owner of the hat and mitts, stop, do a 5-minute learning walk and talk in a classroom, and then carry on. What are you looking for? You're looking for evidence of your professional learning sessions being applied in classrooms. You're looking for evidence that explicit, effective assessment and instructional strategies are in place and you can notice them in the classroom. You're about collecting data. What are the trends and patterns you're seeing in your school? That's data collection. What are you noticing? And taking leaders and teachers alongside you makes a huge difference. We don't want the cast of thousands walking into classrooms, but 2 or 3 people walking together quietly in classrooms, not speaking to anyone. You're trying to be invisible, which is very difficult. And then coming outside and having a conversation. What did you notice? And what did you see that resonated for you about the professional learning we've been providing in our sessions? So why did I make it only 5 to 7 minutes? Well, really, people said to me, I don't have time to do that. Well, yes, 5 to 7 minutes, always incorporating wherever you're walking in the school. But a learning walk and talk is purposeful, meaningful. You know exactly what you're looking at. Maybe it's taking that little face off your data wall and looking into the classroom to see how that teacher is doing, how that student is doing. Maybe it's a student who's come to a case management meeting. And then you want to check in the in-between times, the 3 weeks in between when the teacher's giving it a go with the suggested strategy. You want to go into the classroom, check how the teacher doing, how's the student doing. Not having a conversation. The only thing I would say about conversation is we do, if the teacher's not directly teaching, want to ask students the 5 questions. So just skim and scan, it's really important. You know the protocol around learning walks and talks, they're not visits. And then let's look at the 5 questions. In our next session, I'm going to talk about these 5 questions. I'm going to relate them to assessment data. But for now, I'd just like you to give the 5 questions a go. I started out with the 5 without asking why. And one of the superintendents that I was working with said, well, Lyn, they know what they're learning. The learning intention is right there on the wall, but they have no idea why they're learning it. And then I went, oh, and I started to ask, what are you learning? Yeah. And they'd read the learning intention. And then I'd say, why are you learning that? And one little one said to me, that's not one of the questions. So I was so taken back. I tried it over and over. They had no idea why they were learning it. So this is making the units of study and the lessons relevant to students' lives. And I think that's certainly embedded in many curriculum expectations. Why are we learning this? What is the significant? It's not so that we can learn better punctuation. That's not why we're learning it. We're learning this particular writing focus so we can engage and empower an audience, for example. So moving way beyond punctuation and grammar. But these 5 questions are powerful. Let's have a listen to Carter. I actually wanted to take Carter home. He lives in Brisbane, Australia. Let's have a listen, thinking about those 5 questions. Can Carter, year 1, 6 years old, can he handle these 5 questions? Can he answer them? What do you think?
Hi, Carter. How are you?
Good.
Carter, can we talk about your learning today?
Yes.
Great. Carter, in your piece of writing here in English, what have you been learning about?
Making a personal preference.
What have you been making a personal preference about?
A book or an illustrator.
Great. Excellent. Or an author?
Yeah.
Great. Carter, how did you go with your learning?
Good.
How do you know that you did a good job?
Because I followed the success criteria.
Great. Carter, can you quickly tell me what the success criteria does for your learning?
It does so it helps us with our learning to be a great person at writing.
The
Yes,
why?
so it helps you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Carter, what do you need to do to improve your writing?
I need to put some capital letters at the start. And I also need to do make my what is it? My sight words
Yeah.
all correct.
What could you use to help you with your sight words?
My magic words.
The magic words in your toolkit?
Yes.
Awesome. Carter, if you were to get stuck in class, where could you go to for help?
Success criteria.
Yep.
A friend
Sure.
and you.
Great. Great learning, Carter. Keep it up.
Isn't he adorable? Oh my gosh. So never underestimate the power and wisdom of our earlier students to answer those 5 questions. They really tell us everything about what are our next steps. And of course, number 5 is building that resilience. We want students to be able to know how to learn, where to go for help. Especially when we're all in very busy classrooms. We want them to be independent self-assessors, self-evaluators, and know where to go next and how to improve. Well, do you remember I said I've been talking a little bit about Armadale and looking at that data wall? Right beside that data wall where they're having the conversation about triangulating the data and seeing the discrepancy in the data was this picture. And I said to the principal and the team, who are these students? And she said, the principal said, well, they're actually our student learning team. Really? Well, she said, we wanted voices from everyone. So these were selected students, 1 at every year level in this K-6 school. And we brought them together. We explained the protocol for learning walks and talks. We explained why we were doing learning walks and talks to them. And then we gave them time to work in pairs when the teacher wasn't directly teaching to ask their peers the 5 questions. Oh, I said, well, I've never heard of that before. And then she said, and the students come back to the executive and they've collected their data and they feed back to the executive how the students are traveling. So again, student voice, collecting data on how the their student peers were traveling with the 5 questions, and one of the little ones from kindergarten said, and we want you to know that that question about how to improve was not answered very well. Students didn't know how to improve. And the executive were so taken off guard. It was the kindergarten student that had the most effective data and information for them to work on. So student learning teams were part of that Armadale process at that particular school. So when I think of our work and everyone seeing themselves as leaders, I want you to think of our greatest impact, certainly as principals and as leaders, is when we put students at the center. We're able to articulate, thinking about parameter 1, why we do what we do every day. And each of us has a knowledgeable other to walk alongside. We're knowledgeable others to some, but we also all have a knowledgeable other to ask those questions. As leaders, we do control the learning conditions for success. We need to think about that third teacher, not only in our classrooms, but what's the culture of learning that we're creating. Now, going back to Armadale, as I said, I've worked a long time there. I started in, I think it was 2017 or 18, and started there in person, but then they've used the Clarity Learning Suite and the Clarity Essentials as well. And what I love is the growth that goes towards the northeast of the grid. So this is their NAPLAN data, year 3 reading, and their top, we have level 4 in Ontario. Theirs is strong and exceeding. And you can see that steady growth in year 3 and year 5. Year 9 looks the same. It's only because of the precision and practice that they have developed using the 14 parameters as their self-assessment tool at the end of every term. They do that as a system, as networks, as schools. How are we traveling? What will our next parameter be? So I'm just going to put Joel on the spot now. Joel, have you got, I've asked everyone to fill in this thinking matrix, and some of you may have been able to do that either in paper or on your computers, but I'll ask Joel. Joel, what are your couple of takeaways from this session?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. In terms of my key takeaways, really comes down to how Clarity's 14 parameters, they offer that structured way to meaningfully respond to the OurSCHOOL Tell Them For Me data. So your talk today really reminds me of just how strongly this partnership can position us to drive meaningful change in schools. And by that, I mean meaningfully pairing the OurSCHOOL Tell Them For Me data alongside the 14 parameters in things like leadership development in schools. So yeah, and
Fabulous. And I love that partnership that we have. I'm pretty proud to work alongside the Learning Bar led by Doug. Just rounding out our presentation, do you remember I started with some routines, minds on, operating norms, how we're going to treat each other, learning intentions, success criteria, beginning with data. And then I encourage you to develop your own professional learning sessions using that template, those starters, and then coming back to the success criteria. Were we successful? And that's the part that's so important in the classroom. That 10 minutes of Congress that you leave at the end of every lesson, you say to the students, how did we do? Were we successful? Show me. What's the evidence that you can make connections, that you can apply the learning, that you can show someone else how to learn? So that's the really powerful way we can end every one of our professional learning sessions, returning to the success criteria. Don't leave them out there. They're so useful. In our next session, April 13th, we'll go more deeply into the Clarity tools that really partner with the OurSCHOOL data. And we'll be sending you, I think Joel will be sending you the sent case study that shows how I worked with the Tell Them From Me data and my work to see incredible increase across the Northern Territory in Australia. So I'm looking forward to you joining us as well at that time. So Doug, I'm wondering now if Joel can help us. Are there any questions for Doug and I?
Yeah, let's just see now. Colin, do we have any questions coming through in the chat?
Yeah, I can chime in there, and feel free, everybody here, to submit some questions right now. If we don't get to them right now today, you can send us a note after we send you the case study, and we'll get to them throughout the week. So if you
Right.
have questions,
Sure, breaking up there, Colin.
Yeah. Joel, maybe you could jump in.
Sure, yeah, I can have a look and see. We do have a question there pertaining to how do you know when all students are learning? I'm not sure if either of you care to chime in with how would you really know that this is actually transpiring? What
to send
what
them through.
signs
Do you know
there might
that
be
all
there?
students are learning?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I'll start this one and Doug can chime in. So for me, as we've seen, we need to know who our students are, who the students are in our care, and we need to see them visually as well as numbers on pages. So when we've done that, I often use a Venn diagram. So, and I go class by class. Let's take a look at each class in my school. Which students are struggling, which students are at level, which students are exceeding. And from there, I can have that conversation with the teacher. What about these struggling students? What do you think might work in terms of instruction? So Venn diagrams, I love Venn diagrams. They really help us put the faces on the data. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I've been thinking about your presentation and what you're successfully doing is not bringing your methods to a school or many schools, but you're thinking at a system level. What is it needs to change at a system level to address some of the problems that we're facing? And certainly assessment, been a heavy push from ministries lately to come out with these screeners, short 1 minute screeners, and they think that's going to bring about greater accountability. Not going to work. But what you need is my chair just broke. What you need is continuous assessment all year long. So a very well thought out scope and sequence of what reading is, or writing is, or math, and to be able to chart kids' process throughout the year and give them feedback.
Exactly.
Even at my tender age, I still like positive feedback, and kids love it. So as they're making their way, little note goes home. Your child just finished challenge number 5. They can do this, and it's so important.
And Doug, that fits in so beautifully if that data wall is a continuous learning wall. And so every time the student has made one gain, has one step, that note goes home and the student knows and can say what the gain is and why. Absolutely. Okay, Joel, another question.
Nothing immediately coming in, but we're rounding out the hour just now. So yeah.
I just might want to say that this is long haul work, as Doug just said. This is not quick fixes. We know quick fixes don't work. They maybe have a honeymoon effect for a little while, but they don't work. This is long haul work. This is work Doug and I have done over decades of research and study. And we know that it's really important to hold your nerve. Don't buy the next bobbly, cute thing thinking it will fix something, because this is over time, takes time over time to develop all teachers to become intervention teachers. Doug, you get the last word.
I looked at your NAPLAN data there, and it's the same thing that we're seeing with our Confident Learners program is year over year, you're not only improving kids' outcomes pre-test to post-test or continuous growth, you're also building school capacity throughout the year. So each successive year, kids start at a better place and they finish at an even higher place. And you can see that clearly in your NAPLAN data. So that's just to reinforce your point. There's no quick fix,
No
but
quick
it's
fix.
rewarding work.
Yep. Thanks, Doug. And I certainly want to acknowledge that this work is about teachers, leaders, and students progressing and building capacity. So thank you. Thanks, Doug. I'm so glad you were there.
Yep, Doug, Lyn, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining us here today. And for those interested in finding out more, we'll be following up with some links and resources that were alluded to all registered participants. So on behalf of Dr. Lyn Sharratt and the Learning Bar, we just want to say thank you very much.
And we'll see
Thank
you
you.
April 13th.
Thank
That's
you.
right.